Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Melanoma Research Foundation Meet the Honorees. We are so excited to celebrate and introduce you to our Compassionate Care Honorees for this year's 6th annual Chicago Gala, which is coming up this November 5th at 7 p.m. Central. And today we have the very important honor of connecting with two of our honorees, our Compassionate Care honorees, Dr. Carolyn Jacob and Dr. Rachel Pritzker, two amazing dermatologists who've been involved with the MRF for a very long time. So we're really excited to honor them this year. This year's gala, as I mentioned, is our 6th annual. And unfortunately, we're having to adjust to COVID and it will be virtual, but that does not mean you cannot have a wonderful at-home celebration. So we hope you will all be joining us in November. I'd just like to start off by thanking our sponsors. We have some amazing financial partners that we'd like to recognize: Castle Biosciences, Neutrogena, Dearborn Partners, Genentech, and Derek Dermatology. Just a big thank you for their support. They have been wonderful partners for us this year, and we're grateful. And now I would like to get started with our session. So for those of you who haven't attended an MRF Gala before, I want to just tell you a little bit about what the Compassionate Care Award is. It's very prestigious. We give out one a year, and this is an award that's presented to a leader, and in this case, leaders in the melanoma community, specifically the medical community, who've shown great compassion, leadership, and a patient-centered approach to their care. And again, we cannot be more thrilled to honor Dr. Pritzker and Dr. Jacob with this very prestigious award. So let me tell you a little bit about them, and then I'm gonna pass it over to them to maybe give a little intro, a little personal insight into their lives, and then we'll jump into questions. But let me start with Dr. Carolyn Jacob, who's a board-certified dermatologist, Harvard-trained cosmetic and laser surgeon, and associate clinical instructor at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine. She is the founder and medical director of Chicago Cosmetic Surgery and Dermatology in Chicago's River North neighborhood. Dr. Jacob is a high honors graduate of Indiana University with a bachelor's in science in biology, and she attended the University of Illinois College of Medicine, where she was in the top 10 of her class. After completing an internship in internal medicine at Northwestern's Evanston Hospital, she was the chief resident of dermatology at the University of Wisconsin Hospitals and Clinics, and completed a prestigious cosmetic and laser surgery fellowship at Harvard Medical School, skincare physicians. So very accomplished. I'm now proud to introduce Dr. Rachel Pritzker, who's a fellowship-trained board-certified dermatologist who graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a bachelor's degree from Emory University. She completed her medical education at Rush University, where she graduated as a member of the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Society, indicating placement at the top of her class. Dr. Pritzker completed her residency in dermatology at Cook County Hospital in Chicago, followed by a prestigious laser cosmetic and dermatologic surgery fellowship at Skincare Physicians in Boston, with clinical faculty from the Harvard and Yale departments of dermatology. So two extremely accomplished women who are really leading the charge in dermatology, and we're so privileged to be able to spend a few minutes chatting with them today. So first, I will just let Dr. Pritzker, maybe if you want to say just a couple of things about yourself that maybe I didn't mention in your outstanding bio.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Just check again. Coming to you live from home because that's what we're kind of living in the era of. But again, it's bringing me together with people that I didn't really get a chance to get to know previously. So a lot of positives in all of this as well. Again, I'm Dr. Rachel Pritzker. I'm from Chicago, now working in Chicago. Dr. Jacob and I work downtown in the River North area. And, right now, obviously, during this time, just trying to manage a lot of different hats. I have 2 children, working, dermatologist, still, actively trying to keep up with the literature and contribute to the medical literature. And so we're getting through it, and it's just, a different way of getting through it, and then hopefully thriving as well. So happy to talk to you guys, happy to be a part of the community, and, make this kind of go at it with the MRF great and years to come. So thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Pritzker. Dr. Jacob, do you want to just share a few little tidbits about yourself?
Sure. Well, firstly, I'm super lucky because I get to work with Dr. Rachel Pritzker. So I've known Rachel since she was a resident, and we happened to meet each other at a meeting, and it's been a great friendship and co-workership now together too. So it's really cool to get to work with her. We have a research company here too called Chicago Cosmetic and Dermatologic Research, and it's really neat to be able to do and find out about new processes and new devices and such in the cosmetic field. But one of my favorite things that was brought to us finally in the state of Illinois was this new adhesive strip tape test that we can do for suspicious lesions that look at proteins that are associated with melanoma. And we just were introduced to them about 2 weeks ago. And I know colleagues of ours out in California and New York had them first. And when this COVID thing started, they were using them for patients who, they're concerned about, or sending them to the patients and telling them how to do it too, to check the proteins. But anyway, it's a really exciting time to be a dermatologist because there's so many wonderful new things that we're learning, tools that we can use, the Castle Biosciences information on the proteins as well for our patients who we do diagnose with melanoma has been extraordinarily helpful as well. So it's a cool time to be a dermatologist with all of the new ways that we can look at people's skin and also try to diagnose melanoma.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And you actually did a really great segue into my first question, which is obviously in the COVID era, we're hearing more and more about teledermatology and telehealth and people really connecting with their physicians in different virtual ways. Can you talk a little bit about how you all have been doing that? You mentioned the tests that people can do. Maybe you can talk through a little bit about, do you send them the test? Do they have to come in? Maybe you can share a little bit more about what that teledermatology world has been for you all.
Sure. So it's a little difficult. Everything we do is visual, and about 85% of what we do is procedural. So for instance, if you had a lesion you were concerned with, we need you to send us the pictures beforehand if we're trying to do teledermatology, and then we'll have you come in. And now that we're allowed to do procedures in the state of Illinois, we've been able to see patients and doing full body skin exams, which is really imperative to do on everybody that walks into our office at some point in the year. You can't really do it over telehealth. So that's been a little bit frustrating. Just the resolution between these Zoom photos and stuff is not that great. But when people send us a good photo, we can then at least give them an idea of whether or not they need to come in for us to then biopsy it. But nothing's the same as seeing it in person with a dermatoscope, et cetera. And so it would be interesting if they can figure out a way to do dermatoscopes through Zoom. But the new tape test, actually, we just got availability of it a couple of weeks ago. And so for my colleagues that were sending it, it was back in March and April when their offices were closed. And I thought that was a pretty clever thing to do. And obviously, if that were the case or somebody couldn't come in, we could certainly send it to them. The instructions are fairly straightforward. How about you, Rach?
I think, Kayla, it's a great question. The landscape of how to talk to your physician has been changing pre-COVID. I think a lot of people are relying more on technology to obviously do everything in life, but let alone kind of to consult their physicians, ask questions. All major hospitals have platforms, private practices have portals. So I think that using technology to talk to your physician was evolving prior to this. I think it's going to get even more advanced quicker because of COVID. And I don't think it's going away. Teledermatology is great. It has its limitations, as Dr. Jacob was saying. I just have such vivid memories of sitting, trying to do telederm during shutdown, and the creative ways of people trying to show me their rashes, every which way. And it's fun, it's humorous, but in terms of effectiveness, not great. We rely on pictures. I can diagnose a ton over the camera, but there are the limitations. It's also a good opportunity for me to talk to you about your differential diagnosis, to have you be comfortable with me, and the process. So it kind of really hits the other aspects of medicine, the connection with the physician really nicely, even if we can't accomplish everything in person. And the other part is making sure that the patient feels comfortable coming into the office now, right? So, Dr. Jacob and our whole staff and everyone's been really great about kind of trying to change the environment and making people really feel that when they come in that we're effective for them and make them feel at peace for doing that important, because we know that in the world you're not as easy to go out, and we want to make sure that access to care is still available for you. That means that we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Our workload as physicians has gone up. But eventually, we'll kind of find that piece and really in the future use technology, use telemedicine, and also use what we need to use in the office as well.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, we've been flooded with many questions about telemedicine and teledermatology over the last few months. So I think that's really helpful for people to really have a great insight into this as things continue to evolve, as we will say. Let's talk a little bit now about melanoma diagnosis and melanoma prevention. So obviously you both have been such great advocates about melanoma prevention, and with people really wanting to go outside so much because again, they don't want to be inside, they don't want to, with COVID, we talked a little bit about it on a pediatric melanoma piece we did yesterday. What is sort of the advice that you're giving your patients in terms of prevention during this time, as people again want to be outside and they feel kind of safer outside? Maybe I'll start with you, Dr. Jacob.
Sure. So, it's the same rules as always. It's always SPF of 30 or higher, reapplied every 90 minutes when you're outside. We want you to be outside too, to enjoy some of Chicago's best, times is our summer and our fall. But it's the same rules. And I found that it's a little easier because part of your face is covered. So in terms of having sun damage, you're wearing a mask. I found this really cool hat with these detachable flaps that has a mask to it, and then it's got the flaps that cover the back of your head and your neck, and even some of them go down and get your upper back or your shoulders, and it may look ridiculous, but I bought them all for my kids too, just because it's an easier way to protect yourself while you have to wear your mask in Illinois when you're outside anyway. So I think all the same rules for prevention still apply, that you want to keep yourself covered, keep your sunscreen with zinc oxide on, reapply it when necessary. And then in terms of detection, you can do self exams at home. We try to teach those. We give people a handout from the American Academy of Dermatology that explains how to try to look at your own back with a mirror and the bottom of your foot and all of that sort of thing. And so since people are home and they're not going out as much, or they're not traveling to work or what have you, maybe they have a few extra minutes that they can do that once a month to make sure that any of their moles aren't changing. And again, as Dr. Pritzker had mentioned, they can take some photos of them, send them to us, get a telehealth appointment, and then we can tell you if we think we need to have you come into the office for either an adhesive tape test, a biopsy, or whatever it may be.
So it's interesting that you say that, Kylie, because again, in Chicago, we're going to try and get every minute of outdoor weather possible out of it because we know it's coming up. In terms of, it's funny, Dr. Jacob said, like, sun protective clothing. I was always the crazy dermatologist who was wearing the flap hat and the UPF shirts and things. And, fortunately, so many companies are coming out with great designs, and it's a lot easier for me to relate to my patient and just say, like, UPF clothing is here to stay, and let's incorporate that into our summer wardrobes. There's really obviously I just said there's like fashionable ones, and I don't mean to be trite, but there's really not too expensive ones either that have some great wicking and some great UPF protective factors in there. So I think that with education and prevention, repetition is key. So repetition is key. Every time you come to my office or you meet me on Telederm, I say basically the same thing over and over in my own spiel. And then I am able to kind of, use social media, or I'm able to, this time I think people are doing a lot of online research themselves and they're learning about it. So it's actually a great time to talk about melanoma prevention. It's a great time to have people educate. They are able to do their self-exams because they're home more. So they have more indoor time. So it's education is key, and they have more outdoor time to think about that education and maybe actually make some lifestyle changes now more than ever. And when we talk about melanoma, you have to think about some protective factors. You have to think about some, self checks, looking for the things, simple things like A, B, C, Ds, but I have a lot of other mnemonics and tricks that I talk about. So repetition is key when it comes to education and prevention.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. And I think you hit on something really interesting when you said repetition. And that kind of brings me to my next question, which is melanoma myths. So there's a lot of myths out there, and we're constantly dispelling myths at the Melanoma Research Foundation. We actually came out with a skin of color section on our Education Institute, really just to educate people that melanoma does not discriminate, that you can develop melanoma regardless of age, race, sex. And it's really important to, again, educate people that, again, melanoma does not discriminate. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the myths that you are consistently sort of busting in your practice to help educate your patients.
I think when I'm doing the full body skin exams in the office, people are always surprised that I'm looking at the bottom of their feet. And they say, you can get melanoma there. I'm like, yeah, that's what Bob Marley died of. He did. So when you can relate it to someone else, a lot of people didn't realize that. And of course, he had type 5 or 6 skin. And we realized there's a genetic component to that type of melanoma that is on the hands or the feet. But there's also some new statistics that show that the most rapidly increasing group of people developing melanoma are Hispanics. So again, people think, well, if I have darker skin and I can get a tan, then I'm not going to get melanoma because I can tan. It's those people like Dr. Jacob with very fair skin who can't tan at all that get melanoma. And I think that that's a myth that we really need to dispel that. And also like I need to get a base tan. I haven't heard that one in a while. And I'm hoping that the tanning booths are not open during COVID. But a lot of people used to think I need to go get a tan before I go on my vacation somewhere so that I won't burn. And that's just more dangerous to get intermittent high doses of sun exposure or UV exposure, because we know that the tanning booths and the UVA can cause skin cancer just like UVB can.
Yeah, again, skin cancer in different subtypes, different skin types is definitely a myth. Prevalence-wise, less than patients with lighter skins, but definitely a myth that it is not common or doesn't exist. I think that, again, it's repetition. I think that it's kind of trying to point out the key things to look for, but also to really validate a patient experience and tell them that if they're concerned about a spot or if something is on their skin, that they feel comfortable in any context to reach out to a medical provider. I think patients have bad experiences with doctors, and I think that discourages them to reach out to other doctors or to continue to pursue something. And it's important to realize that we're all not the same, but also to have that kind of confidence and not feel that it's something that you are, people use the word, wait, what am I looking for? Sorry, I'm talking all over the place. It is when people think that they're being like a hypochondriac or they're doing this. No, if you need a little bit more validation, or if you do have some questions, I think it's important to be able to talk to your healthcare provider, have an easier conversation and really feel comfortable and at ease. And I think that some populations maybe don't have that connection, and we have to reach out to the communities to have those kind of resources available.
And that is why you are both getting the Compassionate Care Award. That care for the community, I think, has really come through. And you were nominated by the committee and by the Chicago community. And I think you can see through the facts that you're sharing and how you communicate with patients where that compassion comes from. So let's talk a little bit about what you find rewarding in your practice. You are interacting with patients every single day. So where does your joy come from?
Well, Dr. Pritzker and I are very, very busy dermatologists and moms. And we love what we do. We're so very lucky because, you spend almost more time at work than you do sometimes with your family. And sometimes that means that your work people kind of become an extension of your family or how you look at things. And we have wonderful people that we get to work with here. And then since I've practiced since 2000 in the Chicagoland area, I have some great relationships with patients. Even though I'm not from Chicago, I kind of feel like I'm from Chicago now because I've known patients since they were in 8th grade, then they went to law school, and now they're married and they have a kid. So it's really fun because it kind of becomes another family, but you're also working, doing the things that you really enjoy doing while getting to help others. And of course, anybody who goes into medicine, at least we would hope people going into medicine like to help others. And it's really nice when you see kind of the team that we have here at Chicago Cosmetic Surgery and Dermatology kind of come together with helping out other people and how they all know them and they know about their families. And, how we write down, Dr. Pritzker started this whole thing on our EMR where there's personal notes. So we can make notes like somebody's getting married in December of this year in Michigan and, their sister-in-law is blah, blah, blah. We just keep notes on people so we can remember all about them too and chat with them about it while we're also doing their medical exam. It just makes it really nice.
I would say so. My mother is a physician. She practiced internal medicine, and she always just had such an intense link to our community growing up. And I think from the start, it was just very obvious that that's something that I yearned and looked for in my career. And, it's a profession, it's a career, but it really is a way of life when you choose to be a physician. There are many things that are thrown at you over the course of being a physician. And with things changing rapidly in the medical space, it continues to kind of affect the way that you want to practice and try to practice. But at the bottom line, it's the relationship with a patient. And that every day is what rewards me to modify, change, and to just keep, I don't want to say in a negative way, keep going, but to really feel that I am making a difference and changing. And you have to remind yourself of all of that sometimes, especially right now when we have a lot of different things that are pulling at our attention. But the bottom line is that when I get into the office and I have face-to-face, conversations, or if I'm on a computer or talking to somebody, nothing else matters at that moment. And that connection is very important. When it comes to working in a community, the Chicago has a very tight-knit dermatology community and medical profession, with all specialties in general and everything. And it is really nice to communicate with other physicians all the time and have a really strong network. So even working on those relationships and advancing patient care that way has been really rewarding. So we keep going, we keep learning, we keep reading, and we keep communicating.
Well, thank you for all that you do to support patients, especially during this crazy time where I think, especially melanoma patients, being a cancer patient in general, you feel very isolated. So thank you for giving of yourselves and of your expertise and your time. And I want to thank you again for educating our community today. We're so excited to honor you on November 5th at our virtual gala. We have tickets available. We have amazing auction items. We have a chance to win a trip. So we really hope you all will be joining us again on November 5th. You can see the link there. It's melanoma.org/Chicago Gala to purchase your tickets. And again, you'll be hearing from Dr. Jacob and Dr. Pritzker at that time. I just want to remind everyone, we've been saying at the MRF since March, cancer has no curve. So it's so important that we support our cancer community right now. Create that awareness about melanoma and really keep moving the needle until we have a cure. So big thank you again to Dr. Jacob and Dr. Pritzker for your time today. And we look forward to seeing you on November 5th.